Hello there, it's Gareth here and welcome to this episode of the podcast. I hope you're well. So this one's going up on Monday, the 25th of May, 2025. I'm actually recording it on Saturday morning. It's 20 past 7 here in the UK. And I wanted to record this episode today. It's a little bit of a follow-on from the last two I did. And I want to say straight away, this is not specifically about a water fast. I've seen the title, my experiences of a 7-day water fast. If it's something you've got no interest in, you're thinking, this isn't for me, I'm going to be talking about my experiences of a water fast. But more importantly, I'm going to be talking about the emotional stuff it brought up. And actually, today's episode is more about processing emotion and how we do that. So there's like two sides to it. If you are interested in 7-day water fasting or water fasting in general, there's going to be some information on that. But then we are going to move into dealing with the emotional stuff that can come up. And for me, it came up during a water fast and after a water fast. I'll be more about that in a minute. So, like I say, if the title just kind of puts you off, if you're one of my regulars say, I'm not into this, I'm not wanting a water fast, this is actually something I think you'll find very useful from the emotional side. So there's another thing as well. I'm actually recording this today and I'm going to put it on YouTube. Now, I'm not specifically recording it for YouTube. I've just got a camera rolling while I'm recording this. So if you are happening to watch this on YouTube, you'll see I'm not really interacting with the camera. The camera's just kind of rolling while I'm doing my podcast. So I didn't want the distraction of having to worry about how I looked on camera and talking to camera. I just wanted to get the information across. So that said, let's get into it. I've been doing these podcasts for a long time now, and in many cases, the podcasts I do are interesting things that I think you will find useful, stuff that I think can help you to be a better version of yourself. That's the entire premise of the podcast, to help you be a better you. So a lot of the episodes are recorded with the listener in mind. I make sure that I'm putting something out there that can be understood, hopefully quite easily, some practical things you can do. But occasionally, there's a need for me to record a podcast for myself. And that's because I want to record something that's gone on in my life, something that's important to me. So then it becomes more about, it's more of a record of something I've done. And that's what this episode is. It's for me to really try to help me process what's gone on in the last 2 weeks now for me. Since I took on a water fast as part of a bigger thing. Actually, it wasn't just specifically a water fast. I was doing something to kind of demonstrate and talk about how important it is to have total focus at times. And I could not have expected what happened to me in the last fortnight, things that came up. So I wanted to record this for me so I can listen to this back in whatever weeks and months' time and realise where I was on this particular time in my life. Because I do feel that the last 2 weeks have been quite pivotal and almost like I was at a crossroads and I've decided to take a path, which happens to us all. We all have moments in life when we have these crossroad moments. And sometimes they come out of thin air. And you didn't expect them, I have to say. I'm not sure I expected the one that happened to me in the last fortnight. Other times we can see it coming and we can prepare for it. But a lot of cases we end up having to make decisions of things that come up. So the crossroads we tend to come to in life and we have to cross or choose which way we go, they kind of happen and they can be overwhelming. So at the end of this episode, I'm going to give you ways to maybe deal with that because it's uncomfortable when it happens. So I will say straight off the bat, this feels a slightly uncomfortable episode for me to record because I'm having to do this episode when I'm right in the midst of this process. Because although I'm recording it today, it isn't finished. This thing I'm going through at the moment isn't finished. But it was all started pretty much by an idea to do a water fast for a couple of days and see where that took me and lose a bit of weight. So really quite an innocuous thing. I didn't need to lose the weight. It was nice. I had an opportunity to try something. So what I wanted to say is if you've never done a water fast, if you've never experienced fasting in general, there is so much stuff out there on the internet about it. There's many, many podcasts, there's many YouTube videos talking about fasting, anything from sort of intermittent fasting right through to kind of 2-day, 3-day, 4-day fasting, 7-day fast, right up to 42-day fast. A lot of stuff out there. I've watched a lot of it. What I can say is there's very few that really go into this sort of the side of it that is the emotional side that fasting brings up. And that's what this one is. So if you're looking for this is what you need to do, this is the protocol, this is the kind of electrolytes I took, this is when I drank my water, this is how much I did. There's a lot of them out there. This is not that episode. I will tip onto it, I'll give you some idea, but this is more about how do you process emotions that can come up when we do water fasting, because that is the big thing. As I am now 7 days back into, pretty much 7 days into refeeding myself after an extended fast. That's the big thing that came up for me. How do you manage that? Because no one's telling you about it, and I think unless you're aware of some of the things that can come up, I think you're going into a practice and you're going to do something which you're not fully armed with all the information required to make a decision whether it's for you. So the first thing I'll say is I never intended to do an extended water fast. My intention was a couple of weeks ago, I decided I was going to do a 36-hour fast. I was going to eat on Sunday afternoon. I was going to eat again on Tuesday morning. 36 hours, enough just to reset my system and prepare myself for a week of eating clean, doing more training, and working on a few things around my business. But for reasons I'm still not exactly clear about, I extended the fast. So it wasn't something I'd intended to do was an extended fast. It kind of happened out of, well, we've done 36 hours. How far can we go with this? So it became a kind of an exploration. Now, the problem with that was I'd not really prepared for an extended fast. And although that's not something that people talk about, I think you need to prepare for it. You need to prepare for it mentally, and I think you have to prepare for it physically, neither of which I'd done particularly well at all. I knew I could go 36 hours without food. I've done it before. It's a great way to cleanse your system. If you've never done a 36-hour fast, they're not difficult. You know, there are a few uncomfortable things come up physically. You know, the desire to eat food comes up clearly because you're hungry. But it's not hugely challenging, and I think anybody could do it. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying the experience will be something you enjoy, but it's more than doable. I think when you go from 36 hours to kind of longer fast like a 72 hours, I think it is a lot more challenging. There's a lot of cases online when you go onto the forums or you look at comments on people that have talked about a 72-hour fast where people say, well, I got 2 days in and then I couldn't do it anymore and I had to bail out after 36 hours. I can understand why, because it's an uncomfortable time physically when you get to sort of 36 hours and beyond. So the reason I did this at all, I suppose, was I was presented with a situation which is very unusual where I live with a partner. I've got my partner Sue. We live together. We spend a lot of time together. I work from home. She works from home. So we spend a lot of time together. But she was going away with her mother. They were going on a trip to Scotland. They were going an island off Scotland, an island called Colonsay. So I was presented with a situation where I was completely home alone. I did not have a lot of commitments that week. So it kind of made sense to focus on my fitness and, eating clean, away from having somebody else in your house that can distract you. And I don't want to make it sound like Suscum's kind of big distraction, but I could get up anytime I wanted to. I could go to bed when I wanted to go to bed. I could eat what I wanted to eat. There was no constraints around having to be considerate of somebody else's requirements, basically. So it was the obvious time to do this. And it was, like I say, an intention of 36 hours and then going to eating pretty much carnivore for the rest of the time she was away. So that would have been the other 6 days she was away. And train hard and focus on doing things in my business to create more kind of clients. And so that was where I was at. But on day one of it, when I was in that kind of up to the sort of 36 hours, I found it very comfortable. I found it very interesting. I spent the first day pretty much sort of cleaning the house and tidying it, setting it up for the rest of the week. So I set it up from something that was a house I live in with a woman who's very good at making home into more of a kind of utilitarian space. I brought weights out into the living room because I wanted to be able to train a lot during that time at home, as well as going to the gym. I'd kind of cleansed the fridge from anything that was carbohydrate based. There was nothing in there carby. There was just meat, mince, steak, eggs, yogurt, all the things that would be in line with the carnivore diet. So the first 24 hours was pretty much doing that. So I breezed through the first 24 hours. So by the time it got to kind of 5 o'clock on the Monday, which was 24 hours into the fast, I felt fine. I wasn't hungry. But I had eaten a heavy meal on the Sunday. The last meal I had before the fast was a rather large bowl of pasta. So it was spaghetti and ragu. My missus makes a really good ragu and it was tasty, but I had a lot of it. So I was aware that I'd eaten a lot of carbohydrate, which is unusual for me. Although I don't solely follow a carnivore diet up to the start of this fast, I do tend to have carbohydrates before doing physical exercise, so running, walking, things like that. So I was aware as I got to the end of day one, I probably had a lot of calories in me and carbs in me, so I didn't feel any kind of real hunger pangs at all, and really no desire to eat. So went to bed reasonably on the Monday, woke up Tuesday morning. As I hit the 36-hour mark, I still felt fine, but there was thoughts about food coming in. I realised at that point, I thought, I'm feeling a little bit hungry. What am I going to eat? And I'd set my stall out. If you listen to the last two episodes, I'd actually planned what I was going to eat every day. I knew exactly what I was going to eat on the Tuesday. And then for some reason I didn't. I thought, maybe you could just do it to the end of today. So instead of 36, you take it to a 48-hour fast. Is that possible? And it was at that point I started to really be honest with myself. Like, am I really hungry, or am I just kind of desiring food? Am I like missing feeding myself? Because the one thing about when you take food out of your life and you're not thinking about it because you're fasting, the one thing that becomes obvious really quickly is just how much time we spend looking at food, thinking about food, buying food, preparing food, eating food. It takes actually up quite a substantial part of us day. And I was aware of that. I thought, I'm not hungry, but I'm thinking about food. So there was no real, and I had to be honest with this, there was no real hunger pangs. It wasn't like I was hungry physically, but it was like there was a mental thing going on around food, thinking about food. And for some reason, I was on things like Instagram and Facebook, and I kept pausing and looking at videos and reels that were to do with food. It was like, although I wasn't eating physically, I was looking at food, and it's like I missed it. That was the first thing I noticed. I missed food. I missed buying it, talking about it, preparing it. There was that. It felt like there was something missing. So as we got to the end of day two, as I got to sort of 48 hours, the hunger wasn't there, but I started to notice a lot more focus on thinking about food. So the thoughts were there a great deal. Now, again, 48-hour mark, that took me to kind of 6 p.m. on the Tuesday. The way I'd planned it was I thought, well, even if I'm hungry, I tend to go to sleep about 8 o'clock. So even if I'm hungry at 6 o'clock, as long as I get to bed at 8, and I'm sleeping at 8 o'clock, by default, I'm going to put another 12 hours into this. So I knew that as long as I could get to sleep and to bed on the Monday, bang, I'd be all right on the Wednesday morning. And then I'm into sort of, getting towards sort of 2.5 full days, and we're moving towards 3 full days fasting. So it kind of, at that point, I realised I'm going to do something longer. Now, the one thing, if you see stuff online about fasting, there are a couple of things that you have to be careful of. One is ensuring you're drinking plenty of water. I think the first 24, 36 hours, I didn't drink enough. So I upped my water, and that made me feel better, because something I noticed as I got into day sort of 3 of this, I was very low with energy. I went to the gym, I had an intention that week to work out, but I just didn't have any physical energy. It was like I had this lack of physical energy. Now, what was unusual is the energy physically was dropping, but I was starting to become really mentally alert. As I got into sort of, day 2.5, moving towards day 3, mentally I started to have this real kind of strange feeling of like everything was clear to me. There was like this moment of clarity came, and my thinking was completely and utterly focused. And it was like, I don't know, you've seen that film, the one where, what is it, where, I have to forget the film now. He takes the pill and he becomes clear on it. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? I'm gonna. What is it called? Limitless. That was the film, Limitless. I could see that. It was like I'd taken this pill and all of a sudden everything was clearer. It's like the world had slowed down and I was thinking faster. And it was a really nice feeling, actually, because from a kind of a work perspective and doing things at work, I was getting things done in like a quarter of the time. There were no distractions. I found myself like not needing to look at phones and do stuff. I was just in the work. It was a really, really nice feeling. So as I got to the end, as I got to sort of Wednesday, when I'd done 3 full days of the fast, I had this lack of physical energy, which was, I was okay with that. No hunger whatsoever. And then this mental clarity hit in. And this was the point, actually, at sort of when I got to 72 hours, I thought, wow, this is brilliant. I am so glad I've done this. Wow, this can only get better. So at 72 hours, 3 days, which again, people can choose to do a fast for that length of time. I felt tremendous. I mean, tremendous mentally. Not great physically, as in I had no energy, but I didn't feel uncomfortable with it. No thought of food whatsoever. And the distraction of the first couple of days looking at food and that wasn't there, that had gone. So it felt, I thought, wow, this is it, man. You know, I am so happy with this. 72 hours. Ended up going to bed that night, woke up Thursday morning, and that's when I started to be aware of some emotional changes. Now, I'd been drinking water, plenty of it. You're supposed to take electrolyte drinks. I didn't. I just basically put water, which is a form of electrolyte drink, put in some kind of Celtic sea salt into water. That does act as an electrolyte. It gives you some electrolytes. But I hadn't taken on other things like potassium and magnesium, which again, people do recommend you do. At this point, I realise I'm in uncharted territory. I'm heading into sort of day 4 of this fast. I hadn't really prepared for it. You know, I shouldn't have had the heavy meal the night before I started fasting. I should have brought my food down a bit. And I wasn't really prepared with electrolytes. So Thursday morning when I woke up, no hunger whatsoever, but I started to feel quite emotional. I felt quite low, still mentally very alert, still no hunger whatsoever, but this kind of sense of almost like an uncomfortable sadness started to come in, right? Which I didn't expect, okay? And it was like the clarity I'd got, the vision, the clarity of vision and the clarity of the way I was thinking, things were starting to come up on the Thursday morning. Things around my career, things about some of the things I'd done in the past, things about facing where I was in life at the moment, because I was doing this fast alongside trying to find new clients for my coaching business. And I realised I'd probably been a little bit I was not exactly looking at that properly. It wasn't about, I need a couple of clients, that'll be fun. It's essential I got the clients. I realised now I'd put myself into a position where I'd been doing lots of things around growing a business. And I woke up Thursday morning emotional with the fact I thought, I'm feeling quite lonely. Sue'd been away she's been away for months before, it never bothered me. But this time I kind of felt this, I kind of missed her being there. I didn't want to be around people. I felt like I wanted to be alone, although I didn't enjoy feeling alone. There was an emotion came up about that. But then I got this thing where I started to realise, I thought, do you know what? What are you doing with your life, son? This is what Thursday morning was that, what are you doing with your life, son? It hit me. I've got a coaching business which isn't doing particularly well. You know, I'm in a situation where I don't feel fulfilled. It was like all of a sudden, all the stuff that I kind of knew was there, all presented itself to me. And because I had this kind of clarity of thinking, I could see it in all its horrible glory. And it was like laid out in front of me. There's your work. There's your relationship with your kids. There's your relationship with your family. There's your relationship with, yourself. And you had to look at them all. And none of them had any kind of filter on them anymore. So as we got into day 4, this emotional side hit me where I had to face 4 or 5 things I had to look at, none of which were pleasant. And as I got into day 4, the food thing, although there was no hunger there, I started to recognise the more I looked at the stuff that was difficult to look at, the emotional stuff, how many times then I felt like I needed to eat. Not because I was hungry. I realised that we use food emotionally. The idea of eating something, the idea of just having a meal to take the distraction of having to look at this stuff. I started to find myself, drinking my water, taking my homemade electrolyte drink with the salt in. And then I'm looking at stuff online and I'm spending, on Thursday, I bet I spent 3 hours just looking at YouTube videos and Instagram videos of people doing food challenges, the world's biggest burger, these challenges, these food challenges. And I was doing this so much and I could sense, I thought, do you know what? You are looking for a way out of having to face this stuff in front of you. So what I did partway through Thursday was, as it got to Thursday evening, I realised my sleep hadn't been great. When I was fasting, I was only needing 4 or 5 hours sleep, which was unusual because I was going to bed at 8, waking up at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, in that kind of the darkest time of night, the quietest time of night. So I'm sat there reflecting, And as that happened, I started to realise I wasn't needing as much sleep. I didn't need to go to bed as early on a night. So I had a lot of time. And that time was getting used up. Some of it was used with looking at this food stuff, which I couldn't understand where it was coming from. I wasn't hungry. But the emotional side of it, I thought, it's all tied in. I started thinking about food. And when I thought about this, I thought this was food from my youth, from my childhood. It was like I was looking for some kind of the food equivalent of a comfort blanket. You know, I wanted a food hug, I think is probably what I could say. And I'm not unexperienced with having to work through emotional stuff. But generally as a rule, I can pick it apart and look at it in isolation. So although you might have a lot of things you have to manage, I do have the tools to manage those things by breaking them down and saying, right, well, let's look at this. This is a thing, and then we'll move on to this, and we can look at that. So anything you've got to deal with, even if it's very uncomfortable, if you deal with it in isolation, it's still manageable. But for some reason, I couldn't do that this time. I couldn't break that apart. They were all kind of lumped together. So I'll tell you what I came up with first and foremost. I think the word's embarrassed. I was embarrassed with the fact that after 5 years, since I closed my business down and started to work as a coach, I have not been able to make that work. I've ignored the fact that I don't have a really successful coaching practice. There was embarrassment. I felt like a failure. And again, these feelings don't come up very often for me because, firstly, just so you know, you're never a failure. Right? I wasn't when I was thinking about this. You're not if that's what's on your mind right now. Sometimes you've got to realise you're looking at something and you're not looking at it correctly. And there's no such thing as failure. There's only feedback. Well, I'll go a step further. There's no such thing as success either. There's only feedback. You do something, there's an input and then an output comes. That's the feedback. What makes it success and failure in your mind is judgment, which you don't need to do. It's just feedback. But because I was kind of low on food, so I'm physically at this stage as I get to day 4 very, very physically tired, no energy whatsoever. Even moving around the house, getting out of the house and having a little walk was difficult. I think when you're physically low, it then becomes, I know it's always more challenging than to kind of keep the mental side going. So I couldn't pick them apart, so I had to kind of work through them in a really kind of uncomfortable way. But I thought, I fail at this. It's not working. I'm doing podcasts, I'm doing videos, I'm helping people with things, you know, in some cases helping people for nothing. And I thought, you've not really taken care of yourself with this. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love doing the podcast and I hope it adds value to people. And I do like the fact I can help people with my knowledge. But I thought, you never push your product on here. You talk about it at the end like it's a bit of at the end, I'll just mention my little course I've got. Hang on, that's me living. You know, I'm a coach. I should be mentioning that more. Every other podcast I listen to, they've got no shame in at the beginning talking about their product or at the end talking about working with them. But I shy away from that. So it brought up that all the stuff around the business and to some degree the relationship with my children, I'll talk about that in a second, and my family, and also some of the stuff I've done in the past in business and things I've tried that didn't work, all came up to this fact that I have this massive problem with being a people pleaser. It's like, I don't want to upset people. I don't want to have to say that. I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. But at the same time, what I realised is by doing that, by being this people pleaser, I've created this kind of almost whirlpool of shite for myself because I was bothered more about what somebody else felt. So that came up. And especially with my children, and I'm going to talk about this. I don't talk about this often. I'm going to talk about it briefly. I was separated from my children. I left my wife when my children were quite young. And I made the decision then in the people-pleasing state to think, I'm not going to pursue seeing the kids as often. I felt it was more important for me personally that the kids spent time with the mother and they had stability than I never wanted them going through you're on with your dad Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I didn't want them having a life that was uncomfortable. I would rather them have stability with the mother. I would see them at a time that was convenient for them rather than convenient for me, and allow myself to still keep in touch. And don't get me wrong, I have a great relationship with my kids, but it could have been a lot closer. I could have spent more time with them, and I didn't because I was trying to keep them happy and also trying to kind of keep my ex-wife happy, which is, looking back, was a mistake. And that came up to me. After all these years now, I've been separated from my wife for over 12 years. It came up acutely that, this was not the best way for it. I'm not sure it was best for the kids. I'm certain that it wasn't best for me, but it was based on people pleasing. Then I looked at the things I'd done in the past in business, people that I had helped out, supported, in businesses I'd invested in. And knowing from minute one with a lot of these, that these people were not capable business people. The idea, although it were good, hadn't been well thought through. But I wanted to kind of help people. I didn't want to upset people. So I continued to pile money into things that was bound to be a failure from minute one. And I knew that. But I ignored it because I was thinking, I don't want to upset people. I don't want to have to, I don't want to upset them. And, if I stop it, they're going to struggle and they might struggle. So again, people-pleasing thing came up. And then where I am now with this, like I say, I am not promoting my stuff enough. I have an advert on Facebook at the moment. I occasionally mention it on me internet stuff like the YouTube, the Instagram, but not enough. Are you a coach? Are you a creator? I'm not a creator. I don't get paid to create. I pay to work with people. So I realised that the thing that came up on this, and it came up acutely, was I felt like I had failed, and it was a really weird feeling. So first I had to remind myself it's not failing with feedback. But it came up this thing about people pleasing, and I had to deal with this. And day 4, going into day 5, was all about managing this. It was so uncomfortable. But the decision I made was, I'm not going to ignore this. I could have broke the fast. Nobody gave a shit whether I did 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, 20. Nobody cared how long I did the fast. I didn't. It's not like I was doing it for any reason other than I'll see how far I can go. So I could have stopped at any time. But I realised if I'd have stopped then, I was going back to food, not because I had achieved what I wanted to achieve and lost some weight, which I did. I'll talk about in a second. And I felt, clearly with me thinking, which I did. But actually I was going back to the food as a way to get rid of the emotional upset that was coming up. That would have been completely the wrong reason to do it. So at this point, I realised you must keep this going. And I knew I had to get through the emotional stuff. Right. Weight loss, I lost a stone in the water fast. And as we got into day sort of 5 and beyond day 5, some of the emotional stuff was starting to move through. I could feel now I'd got some clarity around it. I made the decision with my career. The fact is now it is not sustainable for me anymore to just say, you are a coach, you need to find something else. So what I did on the Friday into the Saturday, I started thinking, well, what else could I do? How could I use my skills and talents for somebody else? So I started to look for opportunities, and as I sit recording this today, I have found a position which I'm going to take on, which allows me to use some of my time each week to use my caring, coaching capacity in a way to help other people, but I don't have to worry about getting that. So in effect, I'm pleased with that decision. It feels good. It feels good to be able to think I can use my skills and talents to help other people without having to worry about getting the people to look after. So I've got something there that's coming together. I also became very clear that going forward, I am going to start promoting my stuff more on here. If you're listening to this and you're getting something from it, and you're upset about me mentioning a course and a program at the end, well, you got to understand that's a bit selfish. Well, I listen to Gareth talk, but I'm not going to listen to him selling me shit. I'm not into all that. Okay, well, fair enough. Then maybe, we don't understand the concept of fair transmission of energy. I think it's a place for me to promote my stuff, and I should do. So I'm doing more of that. I made some connections with my kids and realised that actually, although I was feeling at the time I coulda, woulda, shoulda, they've all turned into incredibly level-headed young people now. I've got 3 children. The way they've grown up has been nothing but inspirational to me. They've done some really good stuff. I love them dearly. We have a great time when we're together. And yes, mistakes probably were made, but listen, I'm a parent. All parents make mistakes. If somebody sat there with a badge saying best parent in the world, I'm afraid you're deluding yourself. No one knows exactly how this works. So all of a sudden, once I got into day 5, as we approached day 6, all of a sudden I'd gone through that, and I realised it wasn't to do with lack of time with kids, lack of doing something in the business. It wasn't to do with the fact that I'd made some mistakes in business, which we all make. I realised it pointed out to me of how big a problem in my time people pleasing has become. And from that point, I started to realise you don't have to become some horrible man. You don't have to become kind of nasty. You just have to start to be more honest with, is this really helping the other person? Because what came out is when you people please, you think you're helping somebody else. I thought I was actually helping people by supporting them in business, giving them money to continue in a business that wasn't working. When I wasn't, actually what I was doing, I was empowering them to stay in the same place, which wasn't helping them. So I started to move out of this and realise that what I have to really focus on is people pleasing. You know, the idea of going back to take on some work, you know, throughout the week, you know, I felt that was failure. Hang on a minute, failure? Why? Why is it failure? You still get plenty of time each week to do your coaching and build that business. And also you get the chance to get paid regularly for something that you're going to be good at. Where's the loss in that? It's a win-win situation. I realised ego coming up. Oh, I want to be seen as the big bad businessman. I'm not a big bad businessman. I've run a good business. I know how to manage people. I know our processes. But let's be honest. How many people out there? And I'm not saying, you know, some of you may not get this because you might not be in business, but the people are just full of shit. What you see on Instagram and how well they're doing and all that flexing, it's just nonsense. Below all that, they're not doing particularly well. And I realised because everybody's playing the same game, we're stuck in this, we don't move forward. It's like kidology. And there was a particular instance last week where somebody who in the past I have supported financially in business were putting some online, and I just got so fucking angry. I thought, you cheeky twat, you know, you sat on here flexing and talking about this, yet you still owe me money. It wasn't a gift, it was a loan. And I've never had anything from years. And you just sat and I got really angry. Again, it brought up into me this idea that I wasn't angry with them. I wasn't angry with anything. I was angry with myself because I'd allowed this people pleasing to go on. So what I wanted to get across was a water fast is not just about losing weight. It's all that happens. It brings up emotional stuff. And I'm not sure people tell you about this. And it was emotionally very, very difficult. I made the decision, I was going to do 7 days. I actually did 6. I didn't quite get to 7. And the reason I did that was I thought, I'm not getting any more benefit from this. And Sue was coming home and I didn't want to be having to break the fast. Now, I will say this, if you are doing a water fast, I broke the water fast in the worst possible place possible. Because the last 2 or 3 days of the fast, I'd become obsessed with food. All I could think about were chips and doner kebabs and pizzas. Now, I managed to avoid most of that, but I did end up finishing my fast with a rather large portion of oven chips wrapped in bread with tomato sauce on it, which is not the way to end a fast. When you've eaten nothing for 7 days and your body's reset, the last thing you want to do is eat that. So although it felt nice to eat it, I didn't feel great after it. I struggled with my digestion for a couple of days. But then this last week, some other emotions came up. I thought I was through it. I thought, you're into it, you're eating food again now. When I went back to eating food properly, I felt uncomfortable. I'm recording this on Saturday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was highly stressful. I had this anxiety like something was sat on my chest. And having looked into this, there is a lot of people say that after a fast, the 2 or 3 days after your fast, it can be quite hard mentally, emotionally. There can be stress, anxiety, all them things come up. I didn't realise that. So at the time I'm thinking, is it because I'm eating this food, blah, blah, blah. This can happen, and it happens quite regularly. So if you are looking to do a water fast, don't just look and Google the good things. You want to know the other bits and what happens after a fast. So I made the mistake of probably doing a fast that was too long. I ended up doing 6.5 days of a fast. And I broke the fast, so then when Sue came home on the Sunday evening, I could eat with her on Monday again without having to kind of extend it. I felt it was the right thing to do. So could I have done 7 days? Absolutely. Could I have done longer? Probably. But there was no benefit. I lost over a stone. I was pleased with that. I've never looked as lean. The mental clarity is absolutely unbelievable. But this emotional piece, this emotional side, no one talks about this. And for me, all that stuff, when it comes up, you've got the mental clarity, and then all of a sudden it's as if everything that you've messed up in your life or that you're upset about gets presented in front of you. And now you can think about it clearly. It is hugely emotional. That's the time when you think, I'm going to eat, I need to eat. It's not that you need to eat. What you're trying to do is distract yourself. Food is your relationship with food is so strange because it's built up from all the experiences of what you've done and what you've eaten for all of your life. You know, I look at things like mincemeat plate pie. My mother used to make mincemeat plate pie. I think of that and I'm back as a child. You know, I think about going out and eating certain dishes and my mum and my dad and being a child, and there's comfort that comes with that. In my life, I've had some great days out, great holidays, and you remember the food. Food is such an emotional thing. The doner kebab stuff, I remember that, you know, I was around before doner kebabs were around in this country, in the UK. And I remember going out and in that kind of, in my formative years, 17, 18, you're going out, you're into pubs, you're a grown up and you have a doner kebabs. It's all tied in with that time in your life. So food is not just about sustenance. It's about an emotional connection and relation with it. And if you struggle with your weight, if you struggle with your food, you're not just battling addictive substances like sugar and highly processed food, you're also battling the emotional attachment to it. But what a fast does is it kills all that. I've now been eating again since sort of Sunday. So as the week's gone on, I have kept my food very clean. I've had no urges to eat sweet stuff, no urges to eat rubbish. The thought of eating pizza, doner kebab, chips is not there. But like I said, this week early on, there was a lot of tension and anxiety. Now, this could be to do with the position I'm moving towards taking on. I'm aware that could be the case. But I think for me, it was more about the emotional side from sort of day 4 into day 5 and onwards. I didn't expect it. It took some handling. Bear in mind, I do understand how to work through that. Many people don't. So I think if you're doing this without that kind of backup of that knowledge or somebody to support you, I think it could be a very, very uncomfortable position. And like I say, the fact I pushed through to day 6.5, I was so pleased with, because I was so wanting to eat when the emotions were high. And it just shows you, we change our state with what we eat. We also do it the same thing with what we drink, with alcohol, watching stuff online, distracting ourselves with other people. So for me, I suppose what I created last week, in a way, was a perfect storm. I've no one at home to distract me because Sue's away. I'm not eating anything. I'm in a position where I stopped any kind of commitments. I had to go out and see other people. I kept them very, very low. So I was forced into going through this stuff by myself in a position where there was no distraction. And I realised that's probably the best thing that could have happened to me. Because having gone through this now, since that time, I have had to seriously look now at how my people pleasing has affected me in the past and make some adjustments for that going forward. That is something that this week has become clear to me. I am going to start talking more on this podcast about promoting my thing, because I'll tell you this now, if 1% of the people that listen to this podcast, 1% of these people bought my online program, I wouldn't be in a position where I would need to go and find some other employment to supplement this. And 1%, and I never ask anybody. I realised the people pleasing is something that I should have been aware of, but we're not aware of it. It's only when it comes up like it came up. So I have got to work on that now. So what I will say to you is emotions will come up. At some point, if you sit with them long enough, you'll realise what the emotion is. Are you dealing with people pleasing? Are you dealing with the fact you're very unreasonable or you can't manage change? Are you dealing with the fact that there's some old anger coming up that needs to be processed? All emotions need to be processed, because if not, they kind of store themselves up. And they don't go away, and at some point they'll come out. What brought it out for me was 4.5 days into a water fast. But sometimes what can bring them emotions out is somebody saying something to you, you're getting tired, somebody upsetting you, and then bang, that emotion comes out, and it can be messy. So I managed to go through my emotional stuff in some solitude, not having anybody around that could be caught up in that, because I see it often, you'll see it often, when somebody kind of almost just kicks off and it goes messy because something has been touched. A point has got to where them emotions have come out, and a water fast will do that. And then when you start to refeed yourself after a longer water fast, do it properly. I should have gone on to soups, bone broth, lighter food, not fired into an air fryer full of chips, slices of bread and tomato sauce. It was not right. But in the days after that, I've done really well this week. So as we get into kind of Saturday morning, I've physically got my energy back. My weight hasn't gone up. I thought it would go up. It stayed solid. I got down to 10, which was I lost a stone basically. 7.7 I got down to, sorry. I lost a stone. I've put 3 pounds back on, which I knew would be water weight. So I'm now at a weight which is lowest I've been for some time. I feel good on it. I look good on it. I'm eating clean food and I'm back enjoying that. My clarity's still there, I have to say, but now I believe I'm much better armed emotionally because I have dealt with some of the stuff that the fast brought up. But I will say, when you start to refeed yourself, your body, there's a funny feeling comes up in your body. It feels like tension. I think it was a bit of tension and a bit of kind of almost your body just starting to have it to digest food again because it hasn't done it for so long. So like I said, this episode was more for me. It's more of a way to kind of record where I was at. Would I do it again? I would do it again. I don't think I'll do it again very soon. I think it's probably something is an extended fast I will probably do once a year or when needed. Because the other thing that happened before I go else to this, the 1 or 2 ailments I had, a little bit of backache, a couple of instances recently with bleeding gums. There were a couple of things around the kind of, I would say just 1 or 2 little niggles I had physically. They all went on the fast. You know, the gums went, my backache went, and my kind of niggles. I had a niggle in my knee as well. That all went. That was because of taking the food out, and I think that was part of the healing process. A fast can be incredibly good, but understand it's not just about it's not just about not eating. That's relatively easy. It's about the process that comes up regarding emotions, processing them. It's about understanding how to feed yourself after. So if you're going to do it, I would say my example of just, let's see how far we can go, and not doing too much research into what is probably not the smartest move. So if you're going to do it, research it, but also research the negative sides, research the refeed and the emotions after that, because it's real. Like I say, right up to probably Thursday morning Thursday afternoon this week, I felt so tense and anxious. And again, having looked at that, it's down to refeeding yourself and your body getting used to digesting your food. So, would I do it again? Yes, maybe once a year. Would I prepare for it better? Yes, I would. What will I take from this? I will take from this that the best time on this 6.5 days was at the end of day 2 into day 3. I think a 36 to a 72-hour fast is probably the peak. It's the best I felt. But I'm glad I went on, because if I hadn't gone past the 72 hours, I wouldn't have had the emotional stuff come up, and I wouldn't have had the chance to process that. So it's all good. And like I said, I've gone on a bit here today, but and I hope you've got some value from it. I hope it hasn't sounded too much like a garbled message. If it has, I apologise. I'll be back to my normal service, 20-minute podcast focused and planned next week. But I felt today I wanted that for myself. So if you've got some value out of it, tremendous. Before I go, check out my website right now, garethboot.com. I have got something on there. I'm offering a new download that I've just prepared, which is about your habits, why they're important, and why maybe you can't make habits stick. It's a really simple download, a few pages. You can read it in about 10 minutes. And I think it'll give you the opportunity to understand what I do. And it'll promote a couple of things that I do regarding my 12 Habits program. So if you are somebody that does want to improve your mental, physical, emotional wellness, this 12 Habits program is for you. If you enjoy my stuff, you'd love it. It's not a huge investment, and I think it's something that you could benefit from, because it's not just about an online program. It's actually working with me more directly, one-to-one, or in a group format, should I say, not one-to-one, but you'll get to see me, work with me, learn how to develop these habits, and it's really a 12-month journey of exploration, which I think would leave you feeling better in all those key areas of life, mental, physical, and emotional. Anyway, that's my poor attempt at the end of the day to start to promote myself. I'll do it better next time, because I do feel now I've said enough and I've gone on long enough. So listen, thank you for joining me. If you listen to me at the end, I respect that you've got through 43 minutes with me. But any more you want to know, hit me up on my website if you want any more questions answered on the fasting that maybe has come up that I didn't answer in here. And I will be back next Monday. Until then, enjoy your week and take care.